Let's see. Mic check. Can anyone hear me? Can anyone hear us? We are live. Paradoodly Doo is our mod today. Can you hear us? Just doing a little check. It says we have 4 watching. All right, let's hear something from the audience. Anyone? It says we have 6 people watching. All right, Wim, Michael. Okay, Paradoodly Doo says we hear you.
Awesome, nice to meet you.
Hey y'all.
Hello world, welcome to another RealToughCandy live stream. In today's video, I have 2 very special guests, Adam and Lusen. Both of these guests are not only software engineers, they're also interview professionals. So today we are going straight to the comments. We're going to be taking all your questions about interviewing. If you have questions about negotiation, Adam was telling me before we went live that they just recently negotiated a crazy compensation, some crazy numbers for a candidate. So anything to do with numbers with the interview, let's hear it. Adam and Lusen, I won't steal your introduction here. Can we get an introduction from both of you, your backgrounds and how you got to do what you're doing today?
Cool, Luz, why don't you go first?
Sure. My name is Lusen, they, them. And I started out as an engineer. I got some computer science degrees from MIT and went into engineering startups, some big public companies, and got really involved in engineering management, middle management. And that's where I got to see the other side of the table about how hiring decisions get made, how do compensation decisions get made, how do we conduct interviews. And you can always go to my LinkedIn to learn more, but I won't bore you guys. But eventually I found my way working for this company, Carrot, that specialized in technical interviews. That's actually where I met Adam. So I joined as an interviewer, as a professional interviewer of software engineers. I became director of interviewing and actually led that organization and figuring out how do we interview interviewers and hire interviewer. What does it mean to be a good interviewer? And sort of moved through from that into some other things. And these days I'm working with Adam. I feel like I'm skipping your introduction, Adam. Let's keep this parallel open and you're going to take over the next half of the bridge.
Sure. Okay. Well, yes, I'm Adam. I'm a software engineer. I've mostly been doing Python, distributed systems, that kind of thing at startups. I love startup life. And yeah, I met Luz at Carrot where I was an interviewer, but also someone who trained interviewers, right? So I really trying to understand what a company's looking for, what are the most important things to assess, and how can you be a good interviewer. And in doing that, I just kept seeing what the successful candidates do, right? And at the same time, yeah, you mentioned Candy negotiation. I feel that that's a really important part of someone's life, is how much they're compensated. And so I had this idea and I brought it to Luz because I just love working with them at Carrot. And so, yeah, that's what we've been doing for the last year and a bit or so, which is helping people ace their technical interviews, ace the other interviews that come in that kind of setting, right? Behavioral, all those kind of things, and negotiate a great salary, as well as, finding the jobs and all that kind of stuff. And recently we've started a YouTube channel. Do you want to talk a bit about that, Luz?
Yeah, so I give a lot of talks and workshops and webinars for candidates, also for interviewers, but I do a lot of work with candidates and students. And the work I was doing with, the work I was doing with Adam, we just realized we've been doing this now a year and a half. And like yeah, we've been learning a lot about what works for people. And most of the work we've been doing with candidates, with our clients, is one-on-one. So deeply fulfilling and specific, but we got to a point where we wanted to share that with more people. So we started a YouTube channel, Candidate Planet, to share these interviewing and negotiation tips with more people. We're very excited about that. It's been very fun. We did an earlier video with Candy, with a couple of folks here doing a mock interview and sort of
that was awesome.
giving tips as we did it. We're here now to answer any questions you have about how to prepare, how to talk to recruiters. If you have any specific interviews coming up, let us know. We'll try and guess specifically what we think you should prepare, or what to expect in those cases. We love the specific, but we'll do our best with more general situations.
Excellent. And Paradoodly-Doo is our moderator today. Paradoodly, if you could pop that YouTube link to Candidate Planet in the chats, please, that would be awesome.
Awesome.
Let's go to the questions. Has anyone dropped a question yet? What's up, Jim Janos, George Meehan, Dev, Onel? Great to see some old schoolers and some new people too. Vlaslo, hey, how's it going? Let's hear your questions. I'll start with the first one if you two don't mind. I have a question about over-preparing. Now, I've heard stories of people, this is not uncommon, preparing for an interview for 2 months, 3 months, sometimes even more. Do you think that's overkill, or is this the new reality where candidates have to focus on certain interviewing skills for this amount of time to get the maximum, just to get a job offer in the first place?
Luz, can I talk to that?
Yeah, go for it.
Cool. I don't think that's overkill, and I also don't think that it's a reality that it's necessary, right? I think it's somewhere in between, and it depends on the job. You know, we worked with someone who was looking to go to one of the big 5 companies. All right, it was his dream job.
Facebook, Amazon, just to clarify.
Yeah,
Facebook,
sorry.
Amazon,
Netflix, Google, Apple, maybe some Microsoft somewhere. If I counted wrong, but he wanted to go to one of those, and it was pretty much his dream job. And you don't get that many shots at that, right? We did practice interviews with him, and we felt that although he was a strong candidate, he had a lot of the fundamentals, there were definitely gaps. And we knew from our experience and speaking to people that those gaps might show up. And so why not, in that case, spend 2 months filling those in so that not only can you get the job, but you can also be leveled up to maybe a level above what you would otherwise be hired, and then be in a really strong negotiating position. You know, even if you're going to get the job, if they really, really want you, if you've aced it, then maybe you can get an extra $10, $20, $30,000. And maybe that is a way to justify spending a couple of months going through all the programming challenges in cracking the coding interview or something like that to prepare. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you know, we understand it's not realistic for everyone. Right. And there are so many jobs out there where you don't need to do that. And maybe the big 5 are one of, you know, in that set. Right. So I guess it depends on the situation. And I do think, though, that the more you prep, the better you're going to do, probably. Okay. Luz, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I mean, that was great. And with that candidate, I mean, that was a 6-month process, at least, maybe. Mm-hmm. That said, a lot of the people we work with, we take an iterative approach. It's like when you start looking for work, you start, you apply, and you start seeing what happens, and you just troubleshoot. It's like kind of like an engineer. I mean, for engineers, everything's an engineering problem, maybe, but you troubleshoot. Am I getting to the interview stage? Okay, if I'm not, what can I change? Am I getting interviews, but I'm not moving forward? Okay, well, maybe what are my gaps? We kind of troubleshoot. And there's a lot of different jobs out there. There's a lot of there's a lot of different things we can explore iteratively, and how long it takes any one person. It's also going to depend on what your timeline is. If you're employed, if you need to make rent next month, these factors are going to, just cause you to have your own unique journey.
Right. Exactly. And I think that, the way I see it is that being interviewed, being a candidate is a skill in itself, just like programming is a skill or carpentry is a skill. And how do you get better at programming is you program. So how do you get better at being a candidate? You be a candidate. So you can go through other interview processes feeling like this is just preparation for the one that I plan to ace in 3 months, right? And if you happen to land one of those jobs on the way, and that happens to be a job you want to take, fantastic. And then you haven't, waited a couple of months.
Right. Okay. Great answers from the both of you. We got a question. I'll just keep throwing them out there if you two are ready to field these questions. We have one from Jim. How important is it to study data structures and algorithms when preparing for an interview?
8 out of 10. That's my
8 out of 10. Okay.
I mean, I've seen almost no software engineering jobs where you don't have to know data structures or algorithms, or where at least you're going to be paid more, respected more, in a higher position if you know them really well, right? Yeah. That's not to say you have to know every data structure and algorithm and all the weird ones, but you really should know, I would say, at least strings, how to loop through them and concatenate them. Arrays, how to, loop through it again, add to it, delete it. Hash maps, the same. Oh, maybe there's one or two more, but I would say if you know those.
And when we say hash map, that's, dict in Python, object in JavaScript. It doesn't have to be something fancy.
Or set in Python as well.
Or set.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so if you know those and you know the time complexities and space complexities for the main ones, you're set for many interviews for data structures. And then for algorithms, if you know depth first search and maybe binary search, you're going to pass a lot of interviews, a lot more than if you didn't know those two.
Okay. And then to follow up on that, a lot of self-taught developers take online boot camps on, courses on Udemy, courses wherever else, and they just don't touch upon data structures and algorithms. How early on should the typical software developer start learning this stuff? Should it be before their first language? Should it be during? Or, at what point do you think is a good entry for those?
I can take this one. Yeah. I think after. Because here's the thing. And first of all, like I said, there's lots of different roles. And, if you want to be, I think Adam is absolutely correct that, knowing these building blocks, we talk about arrays and hash maps are set. These are like built into many languages already. Like that's just to some extent learning how to use the language and the tools that are available to you, right? It's not, it's like a whole different thing to say, okay, learn a red black tree or something very, academic. So to some extent, like I think learn the foundation of learning that language. And then you want to build on that. Sorry, what I'm trying to say is that there are jobs that, you can get that maybe the hiring process is to build an app, to build like a to-do app or something, Ruby on Rails to-do app, add a feature. They might not ask for specific, more data structure algorithm type questions. The big five in Silicon Valley, there's different hiring processes across the world, right? And across different industries and across different roles. A data science position or data engineering position will look different than a web development or a cloud, systems engineers situation. So the thing that they all have in common is being comfortable with, having mastering some kind of programming. So definitely, I would say learn that first, then start learning the next building block. And then you want to verify, you want to see where am I at? I want this kind of job. If I start applying for those roles, what kind of challenges am I given? And what do I need to learn next? One of my favorite stories is there's this astronaut. I really should look up his full name before I tell these stories. But I totally forget. But I saw him speak. He's this amazing speaker, the first Latino astronaut in the U.S. And he talks about how, and he came from, his family. He came from like working in the fields, and not even getting, his parents didn't, get a high school education. And for him, he was just like, at some point he realized he wanted to be an astronaut, and he kept applying for years and years and years. And every time he applied, it's not Sydney. I don't think his name's Sydney Gutierrez. We'll keep looking.
Okay.
I'll look it up when Adam answers the next question. But I love what he says about it, which is that every time he applied and he'd get a rejection, he'd look and see, well, what do the astronauts have that I don't have? Or what stage in the process did I fail? Oh, astronauts know how to scuba dive, so now I'm going to learn how to scuba dive. And so, he had a wonderful, he had a different charted a different path. But by the time he then became an astronaut, he was ready. So anyway, I just think that's that's a good process to go about figuring out.
It touches on that iteration process, but I kind of also, you mentioned red black trees, right? I know that's an example of the kind of stuff that probably might come up in an interview, but probably won't come up in your job. Maybe you're a compiler designer, right? Sure, but probably not if you're making a Ruby on Rails to-do app. I again want to touch on interviewing as a skill and how I see it as every company is different, like Lou said, right? What they interview for is different, but there's a very common theme that interviewers often interview stuff that isn't really what you need to know in the job, which is a shame. We can agree on that.
Right.
But given that it's a reality and you want to pass those interviews, why not spend a couple of days researching data structures and algorithms? And you know what? Some of those will come in useful in your job. Right, or they will come in useful when you code, and the basic ones will definitely be useful.
Okay, Great answers. And if you don't use them on the job, you can always start a YouTube channel and do tutorials on data structures and algorithms. So
For sure. I think also, learning stuff that you don't use, sometimes it's nice. It gives you a little perspective, right?
Yeah.
It gives you design patterns. It helps you understand how people at the top of the field think, that can maybe help you design whatever you're going to design.
Okay. Okay. Ready for the next question?
For
We
sure.
got a few more filing in here. Candidate poet Jose Hernandez. Was that the astronaut?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that was his name, but I wanted to check.
Okay.
He's such a good speaker. Anyway,
Cool.
it's good advice, right? Basically, if you think you want something, give it a try and then see what you don't have and, keep step by step, walking towards the end goal that you want.
Right. Yeah. And just, the problem solving process of breaking it down into smaller chunks. Like he didn't become an astronaut overnight. It was a process and he broke it down into smaller pieces.
At least like 12 years or something,
It reminds me, I like those books, when they say how to learn Python in 10 short days, but I think how to learn Python in 10 short years is so much more realistic.
Adam, I sense a book deal coming on. George Meehan Dev says, speaking of old guy, 50-ish, 3 years out of a community college with a degree in web development. How does he get around the ageism?
Oh, this is something we face so much because with the clients we worked with, I don't want to swear on YouTube, but it is not nice how a lot of people are treated in the industry. I think the best you can do is, one, keep on going. When people reject you, right, because of ageism, or conscious or subconscious, keep on going. There are companies out there who don't have that bias in their interview process. Right? So keep up those good spirits, right? But turn it around, right? You're not a new person who just happened to learn to code now, and so you're just behind. You're ahead of everyone else who's, learned 30 years younger than you are, maybe, or 20 years younger than you are, because you have 20 plus years of life experience, and I imagine work experience to some extent as well, that if you can show that that's transferable, someone will pick up on that. I'm definitely not going to say every interviewer is going to pick up on that. But if you can talk to how you've worked in professional environments, so you know how to navigate them. Those of us here who've been programmers for a while, we know that coding is a fundamental skill for a programmer. You're not going to be a successful programmer if you can't code quite well. But if you can code quite well, that's only part of it, right? You have to work with management to get stuff done. Right? You have to be a good team member and help people out. You have to do so many things that you will have done in other work. And if you can just show someone that you've got those skills, and it's a leap of faith, right? At 40, 50, 60 to switch to a whole new career that is dominated by a younger generation. And, I think that shows some chutzpah, right? Some guts. And I think that someone's going to pick up on that and keep on going.
Yeah, I think that's totally right. And I think specific advice, one would be look at the job description when you're applying to work and see how you can cast your existing work experience using some of the same terminology, try to match, basically look, because you're in a great position. You have a lot of work experience, some of that's going to be relevant, put that at the top, make it really clear how you already have those professional skills and anything that might be relevant. And then I think you're in the same boat as then a lot of other people entering tech, and especially with the community college degree, I think that's going to add another challenge, right? Where you need to now show that you have a proven track record for programming.
So I have a question about the concept of ageism. What is the reason for it? Because obviously older programmers can be just as good talent-wise. Is it just a cultural thing, or what causes that?
I think there's so many reasons, but I think one unhealthy reality of our industry is that a lot of companies want people to work day and night, right? Even if you're contracted to work 40 hours, there can be an expectation that you're going to work a lot more than that. And that younger people perhaps don't have the responsibilities, right? If you're fresh out of college, you maybe don't have kids. Maybe you still just got some energy, and maybe you haven't gained some cynicism over a number of years that will stop you working 100 hours when a boss says this is due next week, And I think that's part of it. Can you think of anything else, Luce?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like, why any bias, why racism, why ageism, why all of these things. So I would just say, yeah, haters gonna hate. Being a candidate is a numbers game. Keep applying, keep your eye on the prize, stay positive. Positivity is really valuable.
I agree, but for me, I like to think about like, why is someone having this bias? And then maybe I can not fix that within them, but counter it, right? If they're worried that I'm not going to work hard, if that's a constant every time I'm going to interview, is that I get the impression someone thinks I'm not going to work hard. If I can battle that by going straight up and say, when they ask you the first question, what's the first question? Always tell me about yourself, right? You go in straight, I'm a super hard worker. Right? That's not saying I'm like a young person or I'm not a typical older person. I'm not playing into their game, but I'm just letting them know up front.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
And like I said, your work experience, you actually have a proven track record of doing great things, making a difference, being a great collaborator, understanding business decisions and trade-offs, etc. So
there's also this awful thing, and I think it's awful, of culture fit, right? I mean, sure, I can accept that there is such a thing as positive company culture, but culture fit can so often be skewed to, is that person exactly like me, right? Like I want to hang out with people who fit the same demographics as me, and then we can chat about, I don't know, my favorite interests, video games or whatever they are, right? And so there's just an assumption sometimes that someone who's outside one of my groups isn't a culture fit, right? It's like, could we hang out? I think it's nonsense. And I actually think that the best teams are diverse teams in every dimension, right? Whether that's gender, race, geography, age, all of those things. People bring their life experience to it. But I really come to this a lot, which is that I've done like hundreds and hundreds of interviews, and it is a skill, right? Let's remember that as well as being a candidate. Being an interviewer is a skill. Being an interviewer is the skill of assessing, will this person be good in a long-term job with only an hour or whatever to do that? That's really tough.
Yeah.
And most of the people that you're speaking to who are bringing their biases and so on, they've barely been doing this. They probably interviewed 10, 20, 30 people before you max, right? They don't know what they're doing as an interviewer. They're just kind of winging it. So a lot of their stuff is just intuition, right? And so bias can come into it so much.
And you two have seen the patterns though, because like you said, the typical interviewer has maybe done it 20, 30 times, but both of you combined have seen hundreds of techniques used by other interviewers and how interviewees respond. So you see more of the patterns and how those things work. Interesting. All right. Thanks, George, for the question. Another great answer. Good Storyteller has a question. Do employers value test-driven development techniques? I find it useful, but many developers aren't as excited as I am about using coverage and testing. Do hiring managers care?
I think look, there are so many jobs out there. There are so many different companies with different processes. And part of finding your next job is finding something that works, like that's finding the right fit. So if you love test-driven development, you want to figure out what are the places that are doing that so that I can go apply there. I'm going to really shine in those interviews when when they ask me to demonstrate that and talk about it, and they're gonna be like, wow, you're such, you have the skills for our workplace. And you might not do as great in other workplaces that have different hiring processes and want different things. So I don't know if I would even try to guess like what percent. I would say almost unilaterally testing is seen as a good thing for refactoring. Like everyone wants tests. Managers love engineers who want to write tests and don't complain about it. So I think in general, you've probably, again, be positive. And especially if the job description talks about how they love tests, you want to be like, you want to find the angles of yourself that can resonate with a job description and with what a place is looking for. And it's obviously going to be more, you're going to excel more when those are, lining up in a stronger way.
I'm a TDD fanatic. I'm in the cult of TDD, and I'm not going to write code that's not TDD, right? And Luce is right. I'm going to search for the jobs that want that. And I think that if someone really loves TDD, I'm not convinced that anyone just loves that as a practice. I think that I'll guess that what you probably love is correctness and rigor and writing code that works, right? And like feeling good about that and feeling good about that confidence. And so if you want to go for a job that values that, maybe try to look in a space where that's necessary, right? Some spaces, for example, are storage, right? If you're writing software that manages storage in any way, because data loss is such an important factor there, right? You're going to have somewhere where basically everything has 100% test coverage, or something with a super high cost, like NASA. I mean, if you work at NASA, like they're known for having the best test coverage ever, ever, ever. I'm not saying you got to work at that one organization, but again, if you're going for a Ruby on Rails to-do list app, website, it might not be something where they value TDD, and they might actually see it as a bad thing. I personally don't find that it slows me down coding, but it does have a reputation of, oh, this person spends all their time writing tests and not actually, getting stuff done, right? And so do your best to find the right company.
I've never seen people say that. I think.
Oh, I have.
Like, please write more tests. Okay. And two specific tips here. One, so this means when this is, I think, just generally useful for everyone, is that whether you like TDD or not, just like the presence of tests, that's like extra. So when you're doing your portfolios, when you're doing a coding challenge, anything you're doing, make sure you write those tests. Don't just write the code to solve the problem, have the tests. These are untimed situations, right? Just like your GitHub projects, a homework challenge where you get, to work on that for, they say, oh, it'll only take you 3 hours, spend 10 hours. So impress with your tests. And also in a coding interview, that's like a timed challenge. Like, you have half an hour to solve this problem in real time, probably not at a whiteboard these days, probably online. You may not have time to do like a full, they might be evaluating you in terms of, can you get to the right answer in this limited time? So you want to manage your time very carefully, but you can test even in a fast way of run your code frequently as you're writing it, so that you're discovering bugs and testing your assumptions, anything you're unsure about. You're writing a for loop. Is it, -1 here, sort of test your code as you go, can be really helpful.
Okay.
And the test driven. Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, Paradoodly-doo, can you drop that link we did of the 2 junior developers interview? Because Lusen had some great tips for people with time management, especially. And we talked about so much stuff in that video. Please plug that and people can check that out.
Awesome. I want to talk about how, go on, Luke.
But right before Adam does that, I'm going to shamelessly also promote our latest video on Candidate Planet. Coalesces. It's about doing a remote coding interview. So it coalesces some of these tips.
I want to talk about a little bit, just quickly, about how I get TDD into interviews, where Luce is right? If I spend the whole time writing tests, I've run out of time before I've written any code. This is how I do it. At the beginning of the interview, when I'm thinking about how to solve the problem, I quickly add a rough comment, which says the test cases that I would do, right? Test with a long string, test with a negative number, test with this. Then I write the code. Then I run those things with those tests. And I say to the interviewer, by the way, if this were production code, I would write these as tests. I get full credit for being someone who knows how to write tests, but I still get the code done.
Nice. Okay. Next question. Jim wants to know, how do you handle stress and anxiety at an interview?
Oh, it's rough, isn't it, Liz?
Oh, yeah.
I think there's no magic bullet. For me personally, do a lot, right? Having been an interviewer, and I know that's not something that everyone can just do, has helped immensely, because you kind of just realize everyone's winging it. To some extent, the person on the other side is winging it as well, and they might be a bit nervous about how their performance, especially if they're being watched. But yeah, having practiced, right? If this is the 3rd time this week that you've been asked, tell me about yourself, and you've written that answer down already, right? Or, think what are the causes of your stress, right? Is it, I'm worried I'm not going to be good enough? Maybe, but I think for a lot of people, it's, I worry that I am good enough, but I won't get to show that. That's a bigger worry for me personally.
Or even getting stuck, or like not, yeah.
For sure. It's the practice means that you're going to get stuck less, and you're going to be able to show your skills better. Okay. But also, like Lou said, to see it as a numbers game. the thing is, for most people, there are plenty of great jobs available. And if you don't get this one, there's another one around the corner. And so that takes away from it. But I don't think that it's possible to be completely stress-free in an important life situation, for me personally.
I think it gets a lot better. I'll never forget meeting someone who skydived, and the first time he went, basically he's like, no one can ever do it once. You have to do it twice. Because like the first time I was so out of my mind afraid, I could not remember what happened. I had to go a second time. But then, there's plenty of people who skydive and then enjoy it. So
I was just thinking, there are some people who are really stressed have been very comfortable at their job. They're so excellent at their job and the code base that they work on, but they're terrified of like something new, maybe. I say keep on interviewing, right? If you keep on interviewing, even when you're happy in your job, interview every year, right? You'll just gain that confidence and you'll spot the patterns and see what to expect. So it just feels like, oh, this is another one of those.
Yep. And even 1 to 2. So like, or 0 to 1, like if you have upcoming interviews, at least one time, get a friend, a family member, someone to watch you, ask you an interview, even if they don't know how to code, write out the question for them to ask. I mean, ideally, if they know how to code, that'd be helpful. But write code in front of someone else and explain your approach to them. And, even get a whiteboard if you're going to be doing whiteboard interviews, tape up paper on the wall, whatever.
Or if it's CoderPad, do it in CoderPad, do some coding in CoderPad. Try to minimize what's new. But what's always going to be new is that you're speaking to this interviewer, right?
Yeah, that's a lot of what we end up doing with the people we work with is a lot of prep. We try to guess the questions or topics and we practice it until they're comfortable and they're fine.
On repeat.
And then see how they do. It's like any kind of sport.
Right. And you two have been mentioning, I mean, this is just so vital to realize that all companies are different. Like the FANG companies are in a class of their own, and the FANG, the auxiliary FANGs, if you want to call them that, but there are just so many companies who do things completely different ways. And so, researching that company is so important too, to understand. I think for me, whenever I'm feeling anxious about an interview or anything with the job, something that calms my nerves is just researching more about them and reading about the people, talking with the people, even if possible, before the interview. So it's just like one less thing to worry about, because I'm already going to be stressed out with the actual interview. So if I can get those peripheral things out of my brain, I'm like, okay, I just need to focus on the interview rather than who's going to be meeting me or grilling me or whatever.
There's something else that we tell, I always follow and we tell our clients as well, which is try to remove all the stress in your life that you can around it. So I'm talking about the basics. I'm talking about, what am I wearing today? Let me get the outfit ready yesterday. Does my breath smell because at lunch they served a burrito? Bring a toothbrush and toothpaste, right? I'm serious about that one.
Right.
Did I have an argument with my partner? You know what? I'm just going to tell whoever I'm living with, tomorrow's a really important day for me. Can I just not do any chores and can we not argue? Like, just hold your arguments for a day. All of those things make me a little bit less stressed in the interview itself.
Okay, great. We're going to go. I got this question the other day in a live stream and I wanted to pass it along. So this is a new developer. She wants to know, how can new engineers or developers assess their actual worth?
I know I've taken a lot, but can I take this one first, Luce?
Go for it.
I feel strongly about this one. I do not believe that any human being has a worth measurable in pounds or dollars, right? I think that human beings are so much more than that, and it is a sadness that we use this term. Okay, I think the way that I like to frame it is, how can someone assess their lowest market rate? Okay, right, the lowest acceptable market rate. And I have seen multiple ways to do this. One is these websites like levels.fyi and Glassdoor. They're useful inputs. Another is have a go at interviewing for multiple places. And then go higher than you expect, and see what they counter with, or see what they say yes and no to. If you have that opportunity to interview with enough places, then you can find out what's the maximum someone's going to pay, right? Yep. And I think let's talk about that in terms of maximum someone's going to pay you and minimum you're going to take, rather than your worth. Your worth as a human being is infinite.
Oh, that's beautiful. I just want to add to that. I want to add to that list that ask recruiters. You know, recruiters are on your side in the sense that they're highly motivated for you to succeed in your interviews. So just in terms of also that, how do you prepare for interviews? Like ask recruiters everything that you might have to, what to expect. You know, they can tell you who you're talking with, what the topic is, how you should prepare. They want you to succeed. Interviewers generally want you to succeed too. Like no one would be more happy than, oh great, we found a nice coworker and we can stop doing all this interviewing. Right. But ask recruiters, you know, what the range is, what they think, and try to talk to different recruiters, try to talk to employees, reach out to people on LinkedIn and just to have a chat. How do things work at this company? You know, ideally they tell you what their salary was, but even just trying to ask, what's the range? What does it, you know, take to get a promotion? Those sorts of things.
Okay. Oh, sorry to interrupt. No. This was something we saw the other day in a live stream I was doing. We were on Indeed, and I've noticed this not just in software, but other careers on Indeed. They'll have the range, but then you get on the phone with the recruiter and it's like perversely inaccurate. So how early, when is it too tacky or too just don't even approach it? When's it okay to ask how much you're actually going to be compensated, or when is it okay to answer or ask for the range?
I typically suggest to people that if they're not under real time pressure, that they ask right at the end. They risk essentially wasting their time on an interview process. And then at the end, when the company wants you, you have more leverage, right? They already want you, they put their time in and so on. And then then you're in that discussion. There is another option, which like you say, could be seen as tacky, but you could frame it nicely, which is to say, look, I really like your company. You're my favorite company that I'm applying to, but I've already got an offer from someone else. So I only want to move forward with this one. You know, I might lose that other offer, right? But I'm only going to move forward with this one if it's really viable. Could you tell me the range? Okay. Right? You can say that early on, but you see how that's kind of hedged, right? It's not a comfortable thing to say.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if it's just a North American thing, but talking about salaries is just like, it's almost a taboo topic for a lot of people in a lot of industries. And, you know, are we seeing more transparency with salaries at companies? Is that a trend we can be expecting more of?
I doubt it.
I don't think we're seeing it from the companies, although I have seen some like Buffer, for example, who show all of their salaries and compensation at every level. But I don't think that's a huge industry trend. I think what's a trend is just that the internet means that you can find out more.
I see. Okay.
Right? Okay. Because people can be anonymous.
Yeah, I think Buffer, also GitLab, I believe, there's companies that post all of their, not only what everyone earns, but what the equation is, which is helpful because then you can see, oh, this company, you know, treats, you know, this city as 80% of, you know, this other, you know, you can compare. Because one of the things when you're doing research on compensation, it's always difficult because like, well, this company is this big and it's in this city and it's this role at this level. And so sometimes it's a lot to compare
and
numbers.
I don't know how much the stock is worth, right? Yeah. But even with those equations, you know, it can be difficult to assess your market value because let's say you are 50 and you've converted from being a project manager to being a junior coder, but you know, you shouldn't be paid what someone who's 20 straight out of college, has no experience, is being paid. But there isn't that much data out there. It's tough.
Yeah. I would say generally, I think salary tends to be more locked in. Like, you know, internships will have like a fixed rate for like often, not all the time. You know, early, like someone's first career, the out of college jobs will tend to be much more well-defined. And then as things go up in level or down in company size, basically, like companies that are smaller will tend to have more like nuance. And you know, a lot of the people we work with, honestly, what we're doing is we're helping people tell their story and be seen in a certain way. And like money is, there is no objective truth on how much a company should pay you. Right. So it's more of a conversation, and we've had some really, sometimes it's, you know, it's kind of what you ask for.
Okay. And on the topic, Michael has a question about the numbers too. How do sign-on bonuses work?
Oh, ask. How do they work? I mean, just like in terms of like, what are they? Sometimes companies will, you have a base salary, and sometimes there's other kinds of, what is a compensation packet? Sometimes it's equity or stock can be included. Sometimes it can be, year-end bonuses based on the company's performance. And sometimes there's a sign-on bonus, which sometimes is used like as a there's a relocation bonus kind of component sometimes, where it's like, you're going to move to the city, they'll give you an extra $10,000. Sometimes it's because they're trying to lure you away from somewhere else. Sometimes it's just, sometimes they don't exist. It's all, sometimes you have to stay at a place a certain amount of time in order to get it. There's sort of different ways that it works, but here's the main thing. Your salary is something they are committed to paying every year. And it's very rare for salaries to go down, except for furlough, which is now becoming a thing here, more widespread. But salary is a commitment. Signing bonus is just like a one-time thing. Okay. And when it comes to negotiation, generally you're going to have different things that you care about, and whatever you care the most about, you want to bring that up first and explore that, and then you're going to move on to the next thing. Exactly. And it can be different. It can be in a different order for different people. But say as a general rule of thumb, often it's like, start talking about the compensation, the base pay, because that's, year over year, your raises and promotions are based on that often. And then you try to do whatever you can around that. And then you can be like, okay, now let's talk about a signing bonus. Do you offer one? Or, there's different, I would love to do a little bit of role play, Adam, to like give people some phrases.
Yeah, but can I give a little bit of like detail of what our experience is? My experience is that for engineering candidates, and I'm sure there's difference at the top end, right? People earning in the multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars, but they're usually between $0 and $25,000. That's my experience, right? For junior-ish role, I've seen them usually in the 5 to 10 region, and they're like a lump sum of money. Here you go. But if you quit within a certain amount of time, typically a year, you have to give it back, right? That's the shtick. That's the deal, right? With a sign-on bonus, right? We could do some role play, Luz.
Go for it.
Cool. And I just want to say one thing, just on this earlier point around compensation, is often recruiters are actually going to ask you, sometimes before interviews, what you're expecting to earn, especially if you're coming, like maybe not if you're not, internships, if you're right out of college, the things there's not really a question of it. But if you're anywhere else in your career or coming, if you've worked somewhere before, they're going to likely ask you what you're expecting to earn. And that's when that's a really great time. I mean, hopefully you've done some research ahead of time, but try to avoid answering, but it's a great time to say, what is the range for this role? Like ask them a question to get more.
I love answering that with something like, you know what? Salary is not the most important thing for me. I'm looking for the right role, right? And if they push for a number, I go very high and then say, I've been looking at a lot of jobs around the region and I say something high, but you know what? This seems like the right role for me. And so if necessary, I'm happy to be flexible. Then you can move on, right? Sometimes they just need to fill a box.
Yeah. Just a quick question before you guys do the role play. Have you ever come across an employer who was dealing with a candidate who asked for too much and just said, no, we're not going to deal with you? Like, really? Okay. How common is that?
I think it depends.
I don't know, but like if you frame it in that way, I'm happy to be flexible and so on. I think it works better, but I think that when that's happened that I've seen, the salary range of the company was so low that the candidate wouldn't have wanted the job at that range anyway, right? It's when there's a mismatch in expectations. It's not when I want 70 and the company is thinking 60 to 65. I don't think that, or at least I haven't seen that happen, right? But
yeah, I would say
200 and someone wants to pay 60. I say 200. It's finished.
Yeah. Here's the thing. You are not negotiating before you're given an offer. And especially if you haven't even done interviews yet, like this isn't a negotiation. You're not locked in. You're not having you're not having a negotiation. The recruiter is trying to figure out whether to give you an interview. And you, number one, want that interview so that you can impress the socks off of everyone and eventually get a great offer, right? So, this is not the time to like put your flag in, on that hill and like die on it or something. Like, if you're hence the language that Adam is describing, and hence why you do your research, and you want to place yourself in the right place. You don't want to seem like totally in the wrong ballpark, but it's do the best you can, but don't stress out about it. if they say, here's the range for this role, just pick that high number and move forward. Like if you have to say something, you know what I mean?
What role play would you like to do, Luce? Do you want to be the interviewer?
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's do it. Let's do the questions, like the common questions. Okay. So like,
sure.
Why don't we go through four of them? First one is, hi, Adam. It's nice to meet you in person. I've reviewed your resume. No, that's a lie. They probably never read your resume or portfolio. Just assume that. Hi, Adam. I've reviewed your resume, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to me?
Cool. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. I'm Adam. I'm a software engineer. I've been working on Python for a number of years. And you know what I'm looking for in my next role is something where I can really grow and learn. But at the same time, I really want to use my skills as a senior engineer to build something awesome and world-changing.
Awesome. I'm going to tell you, I'm out of character. Here's what I like about Adam's answer. First, it was short. You know, he didn't take 10 minutes of this half-hour interview to introduce himself. You know, that wouldn't be great time management. I might get bored, or I might interrupt, and he might say, have only given like, you know, 2 of the 10 things. Say the most relevant pieces of information up front. And I don't know, Adam, is there anything else? I
like saying what I'm looking next. I like being positive, right? Yeah. Do you feel like that came across as I'm a positive person? I think that's like the number one thing that someone who's I'm interviewing, I'm kind of looking for them. And we talked about biases, right? You know, you're sitting next to this person every day, maybe, right? You don't want them to be a downer.
Yeah, I think being positive and forward-looking is great. Okay, should we? Well, there's 3 more.
Yeah. Go through them. Yeah, go through all these.
Okay, another common question. These are especially in the interview, for recruiters, for hiring managers that are going to want to know. These are sort of like general questions, like, okay, Adam, why are you interested in MoneyCore and working at this company?
Oh, well, I've done so much research about MoneyCore. I've read your mission statement, and it really resonates with me. I love money, and and I also feel that technically it's a great fit. I've been working on machine learning, and you're doing really cool machine learning stuff, so I'll be able to apply my skills, but also learn and grow. And I see that this is an opportunity for me to grow in my career, and I could be here for a while, maybe leading a team in a year or 2.
I love it. Positive, forward-looking, did enough research to make it relevant to the things I care about. Another similar question is like, why this role, which I love when you sort of answer, introduce yourself, why this company, why this role. It's like you could have your answer almost like conclude all of it.
I would say also, these are questions that come up in almost every interview process. You should prepare this, make a Google Doc, right? Or, other brands apply. I'm sure there's Apple Pages Doc as well. And you can write these questions down for every interview you go to and write your answer. You don't have to remember it word for word, but as long as you've thought about it. I tried to get across there that I've done my research on the company, right? So that I know it's a good fit. I'm not just wasting everyone's time, okay? Sure, it might not be a great fit, but I've done everything I can do to tell you that it's going to be.
And you took the time out of your day to tell that potential employer, I researched you, I know about you, I didn't get paid. Like, you're not going to say this, but you didn't get paid to spend an hour or 2, going to their website, looking at these biographies and stuff. Like, that was a sacrifice you made on your own time. And
exactly. And it is crazy, isn't it, Luce, just how much people value this? Like,
oh, definitely.
Especially the founder, CEO, high-level people. I've seen interviews, like panels afterwards where people are discussing candidates. And they just say, this person really seemed to know a lot about us. Like, that's a huge positive that they've spent 20 minutes on the website, right? More than 5 years experience.
That really, your excitement and desire to work somewhere really resonates with people in a strong way. And it's also a nice part of negotiation. We'll get to that in a sec. I actually think there's three weird red flags, or there's 3 weird things that I've seen in debriefs, in hiring decisions about candidates that maybe are worth mentioning. To me, they're kind of surprising. Yeah. One is the candidate didn't go to our website, didn't know about our product.
That's one of the big ones they say is a total red flag.
That can be one that's like, people will place, I think overemphasize that as a negative, when it's like, we hire someone, you can, you just tell someone, hey, can you go figure out what we do for half an hour? It's not like, should a hiring decision be based on that or not, but it's like a signal, right? So go do your research. The second thing is, that candidate rambled, which I think is very unfair because it's like you're in this high stakes, stressful interview. Like, forgive someone for, losing their mind a little bit. It's fine.
Yeah, and a lot of high stress situations, people deal with that by talking a lot. If they're stressed out, it's just like you deal with stress by talking. So,
yeah,
but
and
again,
you don't know
if
that,
you know that question is coming up, like tell me about yourself, and you prepared an answer, even if you're stressed, you're just going to say the one you prepared. So you're going to do a little bit better. But yeah, Luce, what's the next one?
Okay. Yeah, and so be brief. Try to have a conversation, and enumeration is one of the best ways to seem organized.
Oh yeah. First I'm doing this. I don't even have to know how many I'm going to go. I just am saying a bullet point list, and I start it with the word first, and I keep on going.
In that line,
what's the third question you wanted to ask?
That's a really great question, and I don't remember it, but I honestly don't know.
A common one which we hear is like, why are you leaving your last role? Is that?
Yeah.
And I think be positive again, right? Never, ever, this is my golden rule, although I have many golden rules. Speak badly of your previous company, your current role, people, even when you're asked to tell me about a project, I never want to hear you saying, oh, and it sucked because this teammate of mine did nothing. Even if that's true, it probably is. Why am I leaving this role? You know what? I really like my role, but I don't feel like there's room to grow, right? I feel I've reached the maximum and I want to go somewhere next. Or, I've done all I can in this field. Or, what it could be, you could even say, I'm really actually happy at my role, but I saw this job come up and it just looks so incredible. I so want to work at Money Corp that I would even leave this role I like.
Yeah. One thought about that is, if you are currently employed, that is a piece of leverage when you get to negotiation, because as far as they know, if they think that you're happy somewhere, then they at least have to lure you away.
They have to beat your current salary, plus compensate for that risk that you're taking that, it might not work out, right? When you're kind of safe and settled and so on. So yeah,
you probably aren't happy. That's why you're looking, but like, don't maybe let them know. And one way you can cast this, because like, maybe you do have a toxic manager, or, you were doing school projects or, coding projects with other people, and you did have a really crappy partner. Whatever challenge you faced, be positive about it and turn it into a positive by saying, how did you handle that? I had a manager who was very busy doing other things, and we weren't getting, I wasn't getting the guidance I needed from from the senior engineers or whatever. And this is how I handled that. I did this, I ended up talking to these people. I read this documentation. And what was the result? Then, we still were able to successfely launch. Or,
Can I just go to something that Jacob said in the chat, which is that, it's tough to say those things that we just said when you've only been at a company for a short time, right? Yeah, totally right. And, that's when honesty comes in. That's when you come in and you say, you know what? I felt after 2 months that this wasn't the right fit, right? But I worked hard and I persevered. I'm continuing to work hard, but I think that if I know that I'm not going to be there for another full year, I think it's probably best for everyone that I leave now. You could even, try to quell their fears and say, but you know what? I'm not a natural quitter, right? It's just, in this case, it just happens to be not a fit. And you could even say, that was my first job, or that was an early job. And now I know a lot more about what I'm looking for. And I'm being a lot more careful with, with my job process, right? Job hunt. So I'm going to do that. GTD says that everyone knows why you're really leaving. I don't know. There's so many reasons that people leave jobs. Sometimes it's as simple as, I want to work from home, right? But maybe you don't want to say that.
As far as, so on a related question, I've been asked this too, and I'm curious about this as well. When does their red flag go up when they're reading over the resume and someone's been at a job for X months? Like, is it okay to stay for a job for a year and then leave? Should you stay for 18 months and then leave? Like, what's the baseline so people don't freak out over your short amount of time?
Here's what I first want to say is, you can always, if you're currently employed, you can always be looking for work because you're taking very little risk. Usually in our industry, people aren't being, you have to maybe assess it. Some managers will react to the fact that you're looking in different ways. So, situations can be a little specific, but essentially it's never too early to look, because in the best case, you are working, and once you get an offer that you sign, you can then move. You can then quit. So you lose very little. That said, as a hiring manager, this is actually something I've looked at before, hiring someone. To me, it's actually more of an interesting thing if I see someone has multiple jobs, if like they're never anywhere for more than like a year, that's something we want to assess is, are we looking for someone, is that if that happens here, is that a situation we're okay with or not? What if someone's taking a break? They've been away from, say, programming for, more than a year or something, or more than a year. But usually that wouldn't be a flag. Usually if we see on a resume or a portfolio, if we believe someone has the skills to be successful, it's the point of the interview to then suss out more of like, if this is going to work. You know what I mean? Like, so that would be, as a hiring manager, I would probably be one of the people asking those questions say looking through, doing a resume review and having them talk about their experiences and understand what their decisions were and what they're looking for now.
You mentioned like at what point in the resume. I guess it depends on who's reading the resume and, do they just think this is a waste of time? I will say though that our industry is, I don't want to say unique, but strange in how short people are at jobs. In kind of mid-sized startups in the Bay Area, people are often at those jobs on an average of 6 to 9 months, which sounds crazy. I think, how can you get anything done? But it's true. And so you're competing against people who will probably have similar resumes of, it looks like they've been at a lot of jobs.
I mean, and some people say the reverse is true. There could be a bias of, if someone's been somewhere for, 10 plus years, what I would then look at, what's that?
Did they stop learning?
Yeah. When I would look at, do they have, I would love to see, on your resume, and by the way, your LinkedIn and your resume should have all the same things, all the same bullet points, fill out your LinkedIn. Sometimes, interviewers aren't always getting your resume, or we should do a whole thing on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's your friend. But point being, if you've been somewhere for many years, has your title been changing every 3 years? I want to see something.
Some progression.
Whether it's an actual title change or something new that happened in your role or some new organization that you joined, you know what I mean? Just like something, put some bullet points in there at least,
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. We have time for one more question. Luce, Adam, do you want to fish into the chat and see if something pops out to you?
Cool. Yeah, there's a whole load. Thank you everyone for all the great questions. And thank you especially to people like GTD who are answering some of them, which I like.
Yeah.
Luce, do you have one that you like the most?
I'm just feeling, I'm sad that we weren't able to role play some negotiation conversations. And so
next time.
Next time.
You both are coming back to the channel. You know that, right? You're coming back for more of this.
But maybe something specific to like applying and acing interviews. Let's see.
Whatever. There was also a question about non-technical questions in an interview. I don't know if you wanted to take a crack at that.
What's the question?
It was way up here. It was from Gabe the Fifth. He might have deleted.
What are some non-coding questions you would ask? Like as an interviewer, do you think?
I think that's what I don't know. Gabe, are you here? Or I could just grab any other one. Yeah, there's a bunch of them here.
Well, we've got one here, which is, what do we do after the interview to impress the hiring manager?
Ooh, yeah.
I'll tell you what I do. Let everyone in the process know that you appreciate their time. It is their time, right? The people who are the least appreciated often are those who organize it all. The people who make sure that the engineers and the manager is free to interview you, that everyone knows their job, that the room is booked, that you've got the reimbursement for the travel to the interview. All that stuff is often a recruitment coordinator, or in a smaller company, it could be an office manager. Send an email to whoever it is that you've been communicating with and say, I'd like to thank you so much for organizing this interview. And I'd like to thank the hiring manager and these engineers in particular for spending their time to interview me. I really appreciate it. I've learned more about the company, and I'm even more excited now about the possibility of working at the company.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, that's all I was going to say.
Is it appropriate to add information you may have missed in the interview in the email, or is that overkill?
I don't know. What do you think, Luce? It just seems a bit like, I wish I'd done better.
Look, here's the thing. Here's what I think is generally the decision's going to get made regardless of what you say or do. I think there's the potential to help, by a lot of times, a lot of candidates are concerned about annoying their recruiter or their interviewers. And here's the thing, your recruiter has got so many emails and there's applicant tracking system that like you sending a note might just remind them, oh yeah, let me look into like, let me remember about this situation. I mean, if you've been interviewing, you're more likely to be remembered. There's like actual to-do items, but so it can only help remind them. And I do think the one things that can help them feel more confident about you is your interest and just you saying, I'm really interested. What are next steps? And I do think sometimes if you're asked a coding question and maybe you didn't finish, and maybe you just say, hey, thanks. I really enjoyed this interview. I loved the interview question. Here's my solution. I just couldn't go to sleep that night without fixing that bug or something. It could help. That sounds good. I think especially in, there's a lot, there's companies are so different, guys. Smaller companies that are only trying to hire 1 or 2 people that maybe don't have hundreds or thousands of candidates. A lot of these personal connection points can make a big difference. I think if you're applying to Twitter, I don't think anything you say after an interview is really going to matter. But hey, you might as well because maybe it helps.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. I like thanking people partly because it's a nice thing to do and it's real, but partly because that recruiting person might be in the room while they're discussing it, and they might just say, "I really like that person. They seem like they've got a good vibe," and I want that said.
And also, if you don't get that job, especially if it is a large company, that recruiter, maybe you could say, is there another team? Is there an opening on another team? Do you know of any other positions that would be good for me? Like networking is always helpful. I think make LinkedIn connections, even with your interviewers, and send them a thank you note. Oh, for sure. And you can always, if they move companies, you can always say, hey, network applications are a really low bandwidth way to get work. Anytime you can have a personal connection, it's going to be very helpful. So try to foster that if you can.
Yeah, that's a great point. Even if you totally bomb the interview, if you had a connection with that person, find them on LinkedIn or otherwise connect with them. You never know what's going to pop up. Like things are so dynamic and things are always changing and people are always hiring.
Yeah, and rarely, even if you're getting rejections, it's rarely that someone was like, I didn't like this person. You know what I mean? It's like, it was like, unfortunately, you weren't a fit for this role. Or even more likely is just, there were other candidates and it was one role. And I mean, like it's such a numbers game and there's so many non-personal reasons. Their budget changed. It turned out the role was at this level and you're at this other level. There's so many do not take the rejections personally. And these can still be people who truly do, want to help you if they can,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Adam, Lusen, thank you so much for coming on the channel today. Developers, our time is coming to a close. We had some great questions today. If you haven't yet, please smash the like button. Check out Candidate Planet's YouTube channel. There are multiple videos on negotiation, interview techniques, getting the job. So Paradoodly-Doo, who is our mod, please pop that link in the YouTube comments. I hope you two are down for coming back on the channel because it's always so educational. It's so fun.
It's been awesome, and the chat has been on it. I really like that.
Yeah,
I know. It's a shame we can't get to everything. I do want to say something as well. As well as our YouTube channel, we do also offer bespoke consulting, right? Where we work with people to like ace that job, interview, right? Really get that salary. And that business is called Dangoor Mendel, which is like my surname and Luce's. I'll try and say it in the chat because it's like no one has ever spelled it correctly.
Yeah. And you two have had some great results too, just from the time I was talking.
Oh, really great
Adam.
results. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We've like worked with people who are like really struggling to get interviews or really struggling to pass the interviews. And we've helped them absolutely ace them and get some awesome salaries. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really happy about that. And I'd be happy to, we always do a free little consultation for anyone who gets in touch. So if you go to the website and sign up, that'd be pretty cool.
Right on. Okay. Thanks. All right, you two. This is going to be a really awkward cutoff because I'm on Zoom and I don't have YouTube controls. So when I hit the end button, we all end. So thank you for coming on the channel.
Thank you, everyone. Right. Thank you for your questions and your kindness. Bye.
All right, we'll see you in the next one.